Have you ever looked around and wondered, why does life feel quieter now? Not just because the house is emptier or the calendar less crowded, but because something deeper has shifted. People call less. Visits grow shorter. Laughter doesn't echo the way it used to. And yet, no one tells you this might happen. Not when you retire, not when your hair turns silver, not when you've given decades to raising a family, building a life, being everything to everyone. But here's the truth. Most won't say out loud. It's not always time or age that pushes people away. It's the small, silent habits we adopt without realizing it. The tone in our voice, the way we respond to change, the clutter we let pile up not just in our homes, but in our hearts. These habits don't come from a bad place. They come from survival, from memory, from wanting to hold on. But left unchecked, they can quietly build walls between us and the people we love most. This isn't about blame. It's about awakening. Because the moment we begin to see these patterns, we also begin to change them. And when we do, something remarkable happens. Connection returns. Warmth flows again. Joy becomes part of the day, not a thing of the past. Julie, a retired librarian who once was the heart of her community, never meant to drift into isolation. But like so many of us, she fell into patterns she couldn't see. Her story is not a cautionary tale. It's a mirror. And if we dare to look into it, we just might find the keys to unlocking deeper relationships, renewed purpose, and the kind of peace that has nothing to do with age and everything to do with awareness. So before we dive into the 12 subtle but powerful habits that could be pushing people away, and more importantly, how to gently release them, I invite you to stay open. Open to reflection, open to laughter, open to the idea that the best chapters might not be behind you. They might be just one change away. 1. Becoming too negative or critical. Somewhere along the way, Julie began to notice the silence. Fewer phone calls, fewer visits, fewer shared laughs around the dinner table. At first, she thought the world was just moving on without her. People were busy, distracted, perhaps even rude. But then she looked inward. She remembered the way she spoke lately. A sigh about her aching knees, a grumble at the news, a weary rant about how things were better back in the day. It wasn't that her feelings weren't real. They were. But she hadn't realized how often her words had become a steady stream of complaints. And slowly, without meaning to, she had become the storm cloud in people's sunshine. That realization didn't come from a confrontation or a scolding. It came from a moment of loneliness, sitting in her favorite armchair, staring at the phone that never rang. She thought back to her younger days, when people sought her company for her wisdom, her humor, her warmth. And it struck her. She still had all those gifts. What had changed wasn't her heart, but her habits. Negativity is sneaky. It arrives dressed in honesty and observation, and it settles in when our world becomes unfamiliar, our bodies less cooperative, and our memories more precious than the present. But the power to change that lies in one beautiful truth. Energy is contagious. Just as a complaint can bring a room down, a kind word or curious question can lift it up. Julie decided to do something different. Instead of starting her conversations with a complaint, she opened with gratitude. "I woke up without pain today," or, "Did you see that sunset last night?" She began to notice what was still good, still beautiful, still worth celebrating. And you know what happened? People leaned in. Conversations lasted longer. Her daughter stayed on the line a little more. Her neighbor lingered on the porch a little longer. That old warmth returned, not because others changed, but because she did. For anyone who's noticed the distance growing, here's a gentle reminder. It's never too late to bring back the light. It doesn't mean ignoring your struggles. It means not letting them define every sentence. Begin each day with a small spark of appreciation and watch how it draws others toward your glow. We all get older, but how we show up in people's lives is still entirely up to us. 2. Neglecting personal hygiene and appearance. Julie used to be the kind of woman who turned heads, not out of vanity, but because she radiated life. Her outfits were cheerful, her perfume light and familiar, and her hair always brushed with care. Getting dressed in the morning wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about starting the day with dignity. But as the years passed, that spark began to flicker. At first, it was skipping a trip to the salon. Then it became settling for baggy clothes that hid more than they flattered. She told herself it didn't matter. After all, who was she trying to impress now? But deep down, Julie noticed the difference. She saw it in the mirror when she caught a glimpse of herself and hardly recognized the woman staring back. She felt it in the way others responded, or didn't. Strangers didn't smile as often. Friends stopped inviting her out to lunch. Her vibrant presence had quietly faded into the background. What Julie didn't realize at first was something many people her age begin to forget. Personal appearance isn't about youth or beauty. It's about self-respect, vitality, and the signal we send to the world that we still care. Neglecting appearance can feel like an act of surrender. It creeps in subtly, often under the guise of comfort. But the truth is, how we present ourselves is deeply tied to how we feel inside. Dressing with care can change how others see us, and more importantly, how we see ourselves. It's not about perfection, it's about presence. Julie's turning point came on a Tuesday. She pulled out a bright blue blouse she hadn't worn in years and buttoned it up. She brushed her hair with intention and reached for the soft pink lipstick tucked in the back of her drawer. The moment she caught her reflection, something shifted. She didn't just look better, she felt more alive. When she went out for a walk later that day, 3 people greeted her with a smile. One neighbor even stopped to say, "You look wonderful today." And just like that, the connection returned. Taking care of yourself isn't a performance. It's a promise. A promise that says, "I'm still here. I still matter." For older adults, it can be tempting to believe that appearance doesn't count anymore. But that belief robs us of joy. A favorite shirt, a splash of cologne, clean nails, a little blush. These are not shallow things. They are quiet affirmations of pride and presence. The next time you wake up and wonder whether it's worth getting dressed, remember Julie. Remember the way her world responded when she chose to show up for herself. It's not about looking young. It's about looking like someone who still values life. And that is always worth the effort.
If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 2 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move forward.
3. Resisting change and new technologies. Julie had always found comfort in routine. She liked knowing what came next. Her morning coffee brewed just so, the familiar route to the market, her favorite news channel on at 6. So when her family began shifting how they communicated, using texts, video calls, and shared photo albums in the cloud, Julie simply shook her head. "I don't need all that nonsense," she'd say. "If they want to talk to me, they can pick up the phone." But days passed without calls. Weeks, even. And when the grandkids came to visit, their eyes stayed glued to glowing screens, laughing at jokes she didn't understand. It wasn't stubbornness out of spite. It was fear. Fear of the unfamiliar. Fear of seeming foolish. But the world doesn't stop moving just because we prefer the past. Technology, new customs, even shifting family dynamics, they all evolve. And when we refuse to budge, we slowly close the door on the people we love most. Julie's wake-up call came when her daughter gently said, "Mom, we share so much in the family chat. We wish you could be part of it." That night, Julie stared at her flip phone, realizing it had become a wall. She didn't want to be left out, but she had to be willing to step in. The turning point came one Sunday afternoon when her granddaughter offered, "Let me show you how to text. It's easy. Promise." Julie hesitated, then nodded. What began as a few clumsy taps turned into daily messages. A "Good morning, Grandma" text, a snapshot of the baby's first steps, a link to a funny video that made her laugh out loud. And just like that, Julie was back in the loop. Not because the world slowed down for her, but because she chose to catch up with it. Resisting change is natural, especially when what's new feels unnecessary or overwhelming. But staying open, just open, is a choice that keeps us connected. It doesn't mean abandoning the old ways. It means allowing space for new ones too. Trying something new doesn't have to be all or nothing. It can start with learning to send a text, trying a new food, or watching a movie your grandchild recommends. Julie didn't become a tech whiz overnight, but she became someone her family could include, someone who said, "I'll try," instead of "I don't need that." And in doing so, she regained something far more valuable than pride. She regained presence. So the next time you feel the instinct to say no, pause. Ask yourself, is this a chance to stay close to the people I love? Because more often than not, it is. And the bridge between generations isn't built with resistance. It's built with willingness. 4. Hoarding and refusing to let go of clutter. Julie's home used to feel like a warm hug, cozy, inviting, filled with memories. But over the years, that comfort began to feel crowded. The corners filled with boxes of old birthday cards, shelves lined with unread newspapers, and closets stuffed with clothes from another era. Each item had a story, a moment attached to it. "I might need this someday," she'd say. Or, "This reminds me of better times." But one day, she looked around and realized her home didn't breathe anymore. It had become a museum of the past, one where no one visited. Hoarding doesn't always begin with a decision. It begins with emotion, sentiment, fear, guilt. The fear of forgetting, the guilt of letting go, the comfort in holding on. For Julie, every item was a thread tied to a memory. But memories don't need dust to stay alive. They live in the heart, not the hallway. The clutter crept in quietly, but the consequences were loud. Cleaning became harder. Walking through the house became risky. One wrong step and she could fall. Friends stopped dropping by, and even her daughter hesitated to bring the grandkids over. Julie's world had shrunk, not just physically, but emotionally too. It was her neighbor, Linda, who gently offered to help. At first, Julie resisted. "Everything in here has value," she insisted. But Linda asked one powerful question. "Does it bring you peace, or does it weigh you down?" That evening, Julie opened one box, then one drawer, one bag. Slowly, the process began. She didn't throw everything out. She chose. She kept the photo album from her wedding day and gave her granddaughter a beautiful quilt from the linen closet. She recycled old magazines and donated blouses that hadn't seen daylight in years. And with every bag she let go of, a lightness returned. Not just in her home, but in her spirit. Decluttering isn't about erasing the past. It's about making room for the present. A home should be a sanctuary, not a storage unit. And for seniors, it should be safe, breathable, joyful. It should invite people in, not drive them away. Julie began to feel proud of her space again. The living room had space for guests. The kitchen felt easier to move through. The shelves now held just her favorite books, not stacks of forgotten papers. And for the first time in years, she invited Linda over for coffee, and they sat in a room that felt alive. If your home is feeling heavy, start small. One drawer, one memory at a time. Ask yourself, do I use this? Do I love it? Does it bring me peace? Let go of what no longer serves you, and watch how your life begins to expand again. Because letting go of clutter isn't about losing your past. It's about reclaiming your present.
If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 4 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move forward.
5. Losing patience with others. Too quickly. Julie never considered herself short-tempered. In fact, for most of her life, she'd been praised for her calm presence. But lately, the smallest things began to get under her skin. A slow cashier at the store, a neighbor who spoke too loudly, a grandchild who asked the same question twice. One afternoon, standing in line at the supermarket, she muttered in frustration when the young bagger fumbled with her groceries. The boy's hands shook. He looked down, cheeks flushed with embarrassment. That moment stayed with her. Later that night, she replayed it in her mind. She wasn't angry at the boy. She was tired. Tired of moving slower, feeling invisible, managing aches no one else could see. But still, she wondered, when had impatience become her default response? It hit her that impatience didn't make the world move faster. It just made her heart heavier. As we age, it's easy to feel like everything around us is speeding up while we're slowing down. The world doesn't wait, and that can be frustrating. But when we lose patience with others, we risk losing something even more precious: kindness, connection, and calm. The truth is, every time we snap, we add stress to our lives and take away the opportunity for grace. Julie decided something had to change. Not because she was wrong for feeling overwhelmed, but because she missed the woman who smiled at strangers, the one who made people feel safe around her. The next week back at the store, she saw the same young man. This time, she paused, looked him in the eye, and said gently, "You're doing a great job." His whole face lit up. In that moment, she felt something return. Not control over time, but control over how she chose to meet it. Patience is not just a gift to others, it's a gift to ourselves. It lowers our blood pressure, reduces our stress, and helps us move through the day with more ease. It also creates room for others to feel seen, valued, and understood. The world is already hard enough. Adding more tension to it helps no one, especially not us. So the next time someone fumbles, forgets, or frustrates you, take a breath. Count to 3. Imagine what they might be going through. Maybe that slow driver is someone's parent, moving carefully after an injury. Maybe that distracted nurse is on her third double shift. Maybe, like you, they're simply doing their best. Julie didn't become endlessly patient overnight, but she practiced. And with each moment of grace, her life felt more peaceful, and her heart more open. Because while we can't always control the world around us, we can always choose how gently we move through it. Patience, she realized, isn't just about waiting. It's about choosing compassion when it's easier to choose frustration, and that choice makes all the difference. 6. Dominating conversations. Without listening. Julie had always been a storyteller. Her voice had carried tales through library aisles, family dinners, and countless coffee shop chats. People once leaned in, eager to hear about her adventures, her wisdom, her warmth. But over time, something changed. Her daughter's calls became shorter, her friends less eager to linger. One evening, after another rapid-fire phone conversation, Julie asked gently, "You've been quiet? Everything okay?" There was a pause. Then her daughter spoke softly. "Mom, I love hearing from you, but sometimes it feels like you don't hear me at all." That moment pierced her heart. It's easy to fall into this habit as we age. We carry a lifetime of experience, of stories worth telling. We want to share, to connect, to be heard. But when sharing turns into overtaking, when every story, question, or concern is met with a longer, louder tale of our own, we begin to silence the very voices we're trying to stay close to. Julie reflected on recent conversations and noticed the pattern. She was jumping in mid-sentence, offering advice when no one asked, steering the topic back to her. She meant well, but good intentions don't always make for good listening. The people in her life didn't need answers. They needed presence. They needed to feel heard. So Julie made a change. The next time her daughter called, she focused. She asked, "What's been on your mind lately?" And let the answer unfold without interruption. She didn't offer advice unless it was asked for. She didn't fill every silence. Instead, she created space. And in that space, something beautiful bloomed: connection. The most powerful conversations aren't built on words alone. They're built on listening, truly, deeply, actively listening, asking questions that open hearts, holding silence that invites trust, responding with empathy instead of instruction. These are the habits that turn casual chats into moments that matter. For older adults, this shift in communication can feel unfamiliar. After all, we've spent decades being the ones others turn to for wisdom. But sometimes, the greatest wisdom lies in knowing when to speak and when to simply listen. Julie's relationships began to deepen. Her daughter started calling more. Her neighbor began stopping by again. People felt safe to share, not because she had all the answers, but because she finally made room for their voices. So if you've noticed your conversations feeling one-sided or your calls getting shorter, ask yourself gently, am I truly listening or just waiting for my turn to talk? Then pause, lean in, ask, tell me more. Because when we listen with intention, we're not just hearing words, we're honoring the people behind them. Julie discovered that a listening heart speaks louder than the most eloquent story. And in choosing to listen, she didn't lose her voice. She found her place again in the lives of those she loved. 7. Pushing people away. Instead of asking for help. Julie had always been the helper, the one who baked extra casseroles for sick neighbors, organized school fundraisers, and lifted everyone up when life felt heavy. So when her own strength began to waver, when lifting a bag of groceries became a strain, and getting up from the couch took longer than before, she told herself it was fine. She could manage. She had to. Accepting help felt like surrendering her independence, and Julie took pride in doing things on her own. But pride can be a quiet thief, slowly robbing us of connection. One afternoon, arms full and knees aching, she struggled to carry a heavy bag from her car. A young man walking by paused and kindly offered, "Can I help you with that?" Julie forced a smile. "No, thank you," she replied, masking her pain behind a veil of self-reliance. But later that night, as she rubbed her sore back and sat alone in silence, the truth hit her. She hadn't rejected his help to stay strong. She'd done it out of fear, fear of being a burden, fear of seeming weak, and in doing so, she'd pushed away a moment of human kindness. The truth is, asking for help is not weakness, it's wisdom, it's grace, it's the strength to admit we're not meant to carry everything alone. When we say yes to help, we're not just receiving, we're allowing others to give, to connect, to feel useful. We're opening the door to mutual kindness, which is the very fabric of community and love. Julie thought back to how good it had always felt when others accepted her help. That warmth, that purpose. Why would she rob someone else of that same joy? So the next time she saw that young man at the store, she smiled and said, "Actually, yes, I'd appreciate a hand." His face lit up. And just like that, a bridge was rebuilt. We spend so much of our lives giving, raising families, supporting friends, showing up for others. But there comes a time when receiving becomes just as important. Letting others in isn't admitting defeat. It's saying, "I still matter enough for you to care." And that is a beautiful thing. If you find yourself brushing off offers of help, take a moment and ask, what am I really protecting? Because sometimes the bravest thing we can do is say, "I could use a hand." And in that moment, we remind ourselves and those around us that vulnerability is not the end of independence, but the beginning of deeper connection. Julie didn't become helpless. She became open. And with every small act of acceptance, she invited people closer, rediscovered warmth, and embraced the truth that we're never too old to lean on each other.
If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 7 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move forward.
8. Being too frugal to enjoy life. Julie had always been a saver. Raised during leaner times, she knew the value of $1. She clipped coupons, skipped luxuries, and lived with the quiet reassurance that she'd never be a burden to anyone. Even in retirement, with a comfortable nest egg set aside, she held on tightly to every penny. "You never know what might happen," she'd tell herself. And when her best friend Linda invited her on a weekend getaway to the countryside, her instinctive answer was no. A hotel? Meals out? Gas money? Too indulgent? Too risky? Too unnecessary? But that evening, Julie sat at her kitchen table and wondered, what exactly was she saving for? The what-ifs she feared had kept her from the right-nows she desperately needed. Her bank account was healthy, but her spirit felt starved. When had she begun treating joy like a luxury she couldn't afford? There's a quiet tragedy in being too frugal for too long. We spend decades working hard, sacrificing, saving for someday. But for many older adults, someday becomes a series of missed moments, never buying the dress, never booking the trip, never saying yes to the laughter we once promised ourselves. Financial responsibility is noble, but joy is necessary. And sometimes the greatest wealth is found not in what we keep, but in what we allow ourselves to experience. Julie reconsidered. With a deep breath, she called Linda and said, "Let's go." That weekend, she walked through wildflower fields, ate at a charming little diner, and laughed until her cheeks hurt. She bought a handmade scarf from a local vendor, not because she needed it, but because it made her feel beautiful. For the first time in years, she felt alive in a way that no savings account could provide. This isn't about recklessness. It's about balance. It's about allowing the money you've saved to do what it was always meant to do, support a life that feels full. A good dinner, a creative hobby, a spontaneous day trip, these are not frivolous. They are fuel for the soul. Julie didn't drain her bank account. She didn't abandon her budget. She simply shifted her mindset. Instead of asking, "What if I run out?" she asked, "What if I never use what I've saved?" And in that shift, she found freedom. So if you're hesitating to treat yourself to a trip, a class, a meal with friends, remember this: you've already earned the right to enjoy your life. If not now, when? Julie returned from that trip with more than memories. She returned with the reminder that life is made of moments, not just numbers. And while savings are important, savoring the time we have is priceless. 9. Talking down to younger generations. Julie adored her grandson, Ethan. From the day he was born, he had a special place in her heart. They used to spend hours together, playing board games, watching cartoons, giggling over silly jokes. But as Ethan grew older and their conversations shifted, Julie felt something fading. One afternoon, when Ethan excitedly told her about a new video game he loved, she smiled half-heartedly and replied, "Back in my day, we didn't need all that screen nonsense. We actually played outside." Ethan went quiet. The sparkle in his eyes dimmed. He mumbled a goodbye and left early. Julie didn't mean to dismiss him. She simply wanted him to understand how different things were when she was young. But as she sat alone that evening, the silence left behind by his early departure spoke volumes. Had she unintentionally made him feel small, unheard, unimportant? It's a common trap. As we age, we carry the weight of wisdom, the rich knowledge of lessons learned through decades of living, but sometimes that wisdom gets tangled in comparison. We talk about how things used to be, how much harder we had it, how simpler life was back then. And in doing so, we risk pushing younger generations away. The truth is, times have changed, And while the pace of life may look different now, the heart of it remains the same. Every generation seeks connection, meaning, and purpose. But connection doesn't happen when we preach. It happens when we listen. It's built not through nostalgia alone, but through curiosity and mutual respect. Julie realized that if she wanted to stay close to Ethan, she needed to shift from correcting to connecting. So the next time he visited, she tried a different approach. When he mentioned his favorite game again, she leaned in and asked, "What do you love about it?" Ethan's face lit up. He explained the strategy, the teamwork, the thrill, and suddenly, Julie saw it through his eyes. Not as a mindless screen, but as something meaningful to him. Their conversation flowed easily after that, and for the first time in a long while, he stayed a little longer. Respect flows both ways. When older adults open their minds and hearts to the interests of younger people, they aren't giving up authority, they're gaining connection. And when younger folks feel understood rather than judged, they draw closer instead of pulling away. So the next time you find yourself about to say, "When I was your age," pause. Ask instead, "Tell me more about what you're into these days." You might not understand everything, but that's not the point. What matters is that you care enough to try. Julie didn't have to become a gamer or learn the latest slang. She just had to make Ethan feel heard. And in doing so, she built a bridge across generations, one made of kindness, curiosity, and love.
And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move forward.
10. Holding on to grudges and regrets. The holidays were coming, but for Julie, the joy she once felt had grown dim. Sitting by the window, she watched the leaves fall, not with wonder, but with a familiar heaviness in her chest. She thought of the friend who had betrayed her years ago, the argument with her sister that had never been resolved, the decisions she wished she could go back and change. These thoughts clung to her like shadows, trailing her through the quiet of her days. She told herself she'd moved on. But the truth was, the past still owned too much of her peace. That's the cruel nature of grudges and regrets. They pretend to keep us safe, to remind us of what was unfair, what went wrong. But in truth, they are chains. Chains that bind us to pain, steal our joy, and dim our light. For older adults especially, these emotional burdens can weigh heavier with time. They show up in strained relationships, restless nights, and a constant replay of what cannot be undone. Julie's neighbor, Linda, noticed the sadness in her eyes and asked gently, "What's been on your mind?" At first, Julie deflected, but eventually she whispered, "I just keep thinking about things I can't change." Linda took her hand and said, "Holding on to the past is like carrying a heavy suitcase. Imagine how much lighter you'd feel if you just set it down." That night, Julie sat down with a piece of paper and poured out every hurt, every regret, every unspoken apology. She didn't edit. She didn't judge. She just wrote. And then, with tears in her eyes and trembling hands, she folded that paper and burned it safely in a dish by the kitchen sink. She watched the smoke rise like a prayer, and for the first time in years, she exhaled a little more deeply. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean saying what happened was okay. It means choosing freedom. It means deciding that your happiness, your health, your present life is more important than pain from the past. Studies show that holding on to bitterness can raise blood pressure, disrupt sleep, and even weaken your immune system. But forgiveness, true intentional release, is healing. It restores peace where resentment once lived. Julie didn't wake up the next morning completely healed, but she did feel lighter. She reached out to her sister. She smiled at an old friend at church. She gave herself permission to move forward, not by rewriting the past, but by refusing to relive it. If you find yourself haunted by old wounds or stuck in a cycle of what-ifs, ask yourself, what would I gain if I let this go? because sometimes the path to joy begins with surrender, not defeat, just release. Julie learned that while the past may be part of our story, it doesn't have to define the ending, and every day we choose forgiveness of others and of ourselves is a day we take back our power and write a new chapter. 11. Ignoring health issues or warning signs. Julie had always prided herself on being tough. She'd pushed through colds, brushed off backaches, and told herself that feeling tired was just part of getting older. So when the dizziness started, just a little at first, she chalked it up to standing too fast. And when her vision blurred while reaching for a mug one morning, she blinked it away. But that day, as she reached across the kitchen counter, her world spun and she fell, hard. The sharp pain in her hip left her stunned, helpless on the floor. Hours later in the hospital, the doctor's words landed like a jolt. This could have been prevented if we had caught the symptoms earlier. Julie stared at the ceiling, not in pain, but in disbelief. She had ignored the signals her body was sending, brushed them off like unimportant static. But small symptoms are often the body's quiet cries for help, cries that can grow louder and more dangerous if we don't listen. For many seniors, this is a familiar story. Dizziness, fatigue, chest discomfort, blurry vision, sudden forgetfulness. These can all feel like minor nuisances, but they may be signs of something deeper. High blood pressure, dehydration, stroke risk, or even early-stage disease. Ignoring them doesn't make them go away. It only gives them time to worsen. Julie realized that she hadn't been tough. She'd been scared. Scared to face what might be wrong. Scared of being labeled old or fragile. But ignoring health issues doesn't preserve independence. It quietly erodes it. After her fall, Julie made a promise to herself. No more waiting. She scheduled a full checkup, got her eyes tested, and began monitoring her hydration and blood pressure. She joined a gentle balance class at the community center and began drinking more water, adjusting her meals to support better energy and circulation. She discovered that caring for her health wasn't about fear. It was about taking back control. It wasn't weakness. It was wisdom. Preventative care is a gift you give your future self. Routine checkups, early screenings, and paying attention to new symptoms can be the difference between catching something early or dealing with a crisis later. And it's not just about physical health. Emotional well-being, stress, sleep quality, and loneliness play major roles in how your body functions too. Julie's health journey didn't require drastic changes. It required awareness, a decision to take her body seriously, to trust her instincts, and to speak up when something felt off. And in doing so, she preserved something far more precious than pride. She preserved her quality of life. So if you've been brushing off discomfort or delaying that doctor's visit, take this as a sign. Your health matters. You matter. And staying strong starts with paying attention. Julie's story is a powerful reminder that growing older doesn't mean losing control. It means learning to listen to yourself with greater care and compassion. Because when you take your health seriously, you're not just extending your years, you're enriching them. 12. Forgetting to invite joy and laughter into daily life. Julie sat alone in her living room, a photo album open across her lap. Page after page, she saw herself, laughing with friends, dancing at weddings, blowing out birthday candles with her grandkids. In those images, her eyes sparkled with joy. But as she looked around the room now, she realized something had gone missing. Life had slowly become a routine of chores, quiet evenings, and the same news on TV. When was the last time she had laughed until her stomach ached? When had she last done something purely for fun? It's a common drift in older age, the slow retreat from joy. Responsibilities lighten, the home grows quieter, and days blur into each other. But somewhere along the way, many seniors stop seeking out the very things that made life vibrant. They forget that fun isn't just for the young, it's for the living. That changed for Julie the evening her neighbor Linda knocked on the door. "Come over," she said with a grin. "I'm putting on that old comedy you love." Julie almost said no. She was in her robe, her energy low. But something inside nudged her to go. That night, surrounded by familiar faces and roaring with laughter at a film she'd nearly forgotten, she felt something wake up inside her, a spark, a lightness, a sense that joy wasn't lost. It had just been waiting for an invitation. Laughter isn't a luxury, it's medicine. It eases stress, lowers blood pressure, improves circulation, and even boosts memory. It strengthens relationships, bridges emotional gaps, and keeps us connected to the world around us. It reminds us we're still here, still capable of delight. Julie began making small changes. She turned off the news one morning and played her favorite music instead. She danced in the kitchen with a wooden spoon. She joined a local senior group that played trivia on Wednesdays. She made time for silliness, for play, for moments that didn't have a purpose beyond making her smile. You don't need to wait for a special occasion to feel alive again. Watch a funny movie, tell a joke, sing a song, even if you forget a few lyrics. Be around people who lift your spirit, who remind you that life is not just meant to be lived, but enjoyed. Julie discovered that choosing joy was not about ignoring hardship. It was about balancing life's weight with moments of light. And in doing so, she didn't just feel happier, she felt younger, freer, more herself again. So ask yourself, when was the last time you laughed? Really laughed? Maybe it's time to invite joy back in. Because the secret to feeling alive isn't in the years we've lived. It's in the moments we still choose to savor.
Thank you for joining us today. We would love to hear from you. Please leave a comment below and share one thing you learned today, how you plan to use it in your life. Your thoughts are important to us, so don't hesitate to share them. Reading your comments gives us great motivation and encouragement. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us continue to create great content to inform and inspire you. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.